A beautiful poem by Borges, which is written in Spanish, I guess, or Portuguese, doesn't it? But it translates as things. And the structure of the poem is very simple. It's basically just a list of things, I guess. The first two-thirds of the list are kind of positive things which kind of could exist. And the last third is a list of things which are understood in the negative, the sound that something doesn't make, or something that's only recognised in its absence, that kind of thing. I wish I could remember this poem, actually. I'm going to try and learn it at some point. But because there's some really striking images. The only thing I can remember from the list is the one that closes the list of things before it goes into absences. And that's he says, the turtle at the bottom of the well. And I say that closes the list of positively existing entities. There's something very interesting about this list. They're all, like a lot of Borges' writing, they all kind of allude to, not exactly metaphysics, but some kind of mythic narrative. They have that kind of feel to them. There's a kind of allusions to books and to times long gone by, maps, that kind of imagery comes up in them. Precious metals, weird mixture of the kind of sacred and profane, or the highly valuable and the much more mundane aspects of human existence kind of stud these objects and these things. Well, there's a couple of things which I find really interesting about this, just in relation to what I've been thinking about recently. And the first is to do with this idea of things. He calls it things, or it translates as this word things. And things, as I understand it, has a very particular set of analyses around it, the concept of what a thing is in cognitive terms. And I believe it's Jackendoff that writes about this, who's a cognitive scientist, cognitive linguist, really. And he talks about these things, other people talk about them as kind of entities, that when we understand the concept of a thing, we're kind of invoking an image schema associated with that thing. It has a particular structure. Thingness comes with a lot of structural baggage to it. And elsewhere I've spoken about that in relation to how Gestalt understands things, objects, or figures, we call it in Gestalt, as distinct from the ground on which those figures appear. So they tend to be clearly delineated, they tend to be slightly brighter lit than their background. There's a whole set of relationships to them, which I think also characterize the image schema associated with things. But there's something funny about the things. Well, the two parts to that, really. That's an understanding of things as kind of real physical objects in the world. But we also understand non-physical entities as things sometimes as well. So we talk about concepts as things sometimes, abstract concepts, as if they were things. We talk about an hour, a slice of abstract time, as if it was a thing, with a beginning, a middle and an end, or a set of borders around it. Or we talk about, I can't think of another single example, I'll have a think about it whilst I'm talking, but we do talk about abstract concepts as if they were things, and that's part of that whole kind of application of conceptual metaphor, by which we understand the abstract in terms of the concrete. And that also applies to thingness, which is why we have these image schemas, as Jackendoff says, for things. So the things that appear in Borges' poem, there's something slightly peculiar about those things, I think. They clearly occupy that strange realm of thingness, either in the most concrete sense, like the turtle at the bottom of the well. The turtle is an object, kind of. It has a location in space. It can be separated from its background, albeit a rather unusual background it's been placed within. But some of the objects on the list, to do with sounds and to do with kind of organisations and memories and these kind of more abstract concepts, also feature as things, but they're not concrete things. But all of those things, both concrete and abstract alike, have this slightly unexpected quality to them. I hope the wind's picking up, so my sound of my voice may be lost here. But they all have this slightly unexpected quality to them. They don't entirely... What do they do exactly? I'm trying to interpret my relationships. They don't seem typical somehow. They fulfill all of the criteria for having this kind of image schematic quality of thingness about them. But all of them, both positive and particularly negative, kind of problematize that whole idea, or kind of invite us to think again about what thingness is. And the reason why I've been drawn to this again is because I was reading, or rereading actually, part of a book by Raeven Tsur called On the Shores of Nothingness, which is a study in cognitive, as he says, a study in cognitive poetics, particularly looking at certain, it's not really important what I'm saying now, but it's particularly to do with certain kinds of religious or metaphysical experiences that might be conveyed through certain kinds of poetic writing. But what he says as part of that, what he reminds us of as part of that, is one of the roles of poetry is defamiliarisation, by which the familiar becomes strange, and we look again at those objects and those experiences which we normally would not spend time on. And I think what Borges is doing in that poem, Things, is he's kind of providing a list of objects which require that kind of a second glance. Raeven Tsur goes on to talk about it in terms of, as he describe it, he says something like that the objects that defamiliarisation draws attention to are those ones that we tend to kind of fill in for ourselves. So in the way that we look at a box, and even though we're only seeing the front side of it, we kind of automatically and unself-consciously fill in the sides and the back of that box. Whereas when we see the front of a person, we don't need to go around the back to check that they've got a spine. We just kind of know that, and we kind of fill in the details. He says that one of the things that defamiliarisation does is that it invites us to look around the back, I guess, or invites us to not fill in the details in these objects, not go through that routine whereby we immediately kind of grasp the familiar object in its entirety, but rather recognise the partiality that we're being given, recognising that we're seeing the box from one angle, and invites us to walk around the back, I suppose. And I think that's what Borges is doing with his list, and the positive list, and that the turtle at the bottom of the well is probably the most simple, actually, of the things on the first part of that poem, first part of that list. But even that, the fact that the turtle is at the bottom of the well, invites a certain kind of relationship to our understanding of that image. We're kind of forced to not just kind of fill in the details, but to kind of metaphorically walk up to the well and look down at it and engage in that kind of a rather odd kinesthetic image process. So walking across this field, and I've just found this spoon, which I'm going to keep, because it looks a little bit like something I was thinking about a minute ago, which is an Urabora, a snake eating its tail. So I'm going to keep that.